Good evening to all of you. On behalf of the Institute of Internal Auditors All India, I extend a very hearty welcome to all the participants, the esteemed speakers, and dear colleagues, and the President of All India, Mr. Adithya, and Nikhil Kochar, who is the CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors India, and also Mr. Satish Shenoy, the moderator for this forum today. A very warm welcome to all of you. And it's really, I'm privileged to address this forum today with the very vibrant team who has been supporting to make this happen as part of the International Women's Day. I would just like to give you a small brief about the Women's Forum now, before we talk on the theme. The Women's Forum was conceived by Mr. Siddharth Balla from Delhi chapter initially in 2018. And then this was founded in the year 2019, at first in Delhi. Then we formed the same Women's Forum across all the 6 chapters in India. And now all the 6 chapters have come together today to celebrate this International Women's Day on behalf of the All India team here. So I'm really proud to introduce all the 6 chapter chairs. Of course, Ms. Sana will be doing the intro of the respective chairs. But some of the objectives which the other forums with the other chapters are doing are really very, very creditable. They work on the networking opportunities, and the Calcutta chapter very specifically, I would like to mention here that they have also released the news edition as part of the Women's Day celebration, and the Delhi chapter are doing a lot of activities towards the networking and the corporate growth for the women, focusing mainly on the women who have also discontinued and then joining back to the internal audit profession. Similarly, Mumbai chapter is also working towards women entrepreneurship and growth opportunities who are in the internal audit fraternity. Similarly, Hyderabad and Bangalore are doing a lot of mentorship programs for women. So, and helping them in upgrading their soft skills, which is what is really required in today's scenario, in the corporate scenario, with the challenges that all of us face. It's not only men or women, it's all of us who are facing the soft skill development and the technology upgradation. So they also help in those kind of activities. And in the Chennai chapter also are doing a lot of webinars and programs connected to this. So all the 6 chapters are having some programs or the other planned for every month. And also we are releasing the audit magazine as part of the Women's Day celebrations. So this is what in nutshell, the activities that are being done across all the chapters. Now, coming back to the theme, of course, we all know it is a international theme, break the bias. But to be very honest, when we took the theme, I was not aware that this was a 2022 theme. It just came across in our mind when we addressed this in a common conference call, and they said, why don't we take break the bias? I somewhere Googled it. And it just caught everyone's attention, and immediately we froze that theme. And then we started doing, then that's when we realized, oh, it's a 2022 theme itself, you know. So we were so happy about that. And this is basically a forging an inclusive, diverse, and equal future between genders, which is very, very relevant today. And it's certainly a timely topic. You know? Gender bias still remains a prevalent and pivotal issue in the fight for greater equality. And I'm sure everyone would agree for that. And I would like to get the perspectives and insights from the esteemed speakers today. So we have very eminent speakers today from different kind of a background, from different industries. Some of them are from the service sector, some of them are from corporates. So it'll be very interesting, and it's going to be moderated by Mr. Satish Shenoy, who is again a very, very senior person for all of us. I would say he's a guru for all of us, you know, in our internal audit fraternity. We would like to address him as our mentor, guru, whatever you call. So, I mean, I think we should all be happy, more than happy to know that this session is going to be moderated by him. And I thank once again all of you to have come here and join this forum this evening, and hope you all have a very fruitful session. Thank you very much. I would like to move on this to Mr. Nikhil Kochar, and Nikhil Kochar will be introducing Mr. Adithya Bhat, who is the president. And I would just like to talk a 2 line about Mr. Nikhil Kochar. He is the main pillar behind the Institute of Internal Auditors All India. He is a chartered accountant, and he runs his own consulting firm. But I think, I'm sure he is really making the IAA in that stand up today in the international structure. That is what he drives all of us, you know. Though we are all volunteers working here, but it is Nikhil ji who really drives us to make these things happen. So I would like to thank Nikhil ji also for accepting our invite to come and address this forum and be a part of a forum today. Over to Nikhil ji.
Thank you so much, Omaji. I think I'm not very sure whether I'm the one who's driving you or you're the one who's driving all of us, but certainly I'm extremely proud of the fact of how brilliantly, I would say, that the Women's Forum has taken off in IIA India. That is very, very clearly visible in the number of activities which you are all undertaking, in the very fact that you organized this program. Last year, you organized an excellent conference, and I'm sure you're going to be conducting many, many more activities. It is this vibrancy which is extremely heartening, and I'm sure the Women's Forum not only is going to be represented more in terms of governance, but it's going to move from strength to strength. Thank you for your kind words. It's also my pleasure to introduce the Honorary President of IIA India, Mr. Adithya Bhat. In view of his wishes, I'm going to keep it very, very brief. Adithya is, apart from, I think, a CIA as well as a chartered accountant, he has also been a partner in one of the big four, and he's been heading their risk and governance functions. So he has more than 28 years of experience overall. He's currently working as the Chief Risk Officer for a very, very large Indian conglomerate, which has also got a representation in multiple international territories. So with that brief introduction, I would hand it over to Adithya for his keynote address. Best wishes to you. Over.
Yeah. Thanks, Nikhil. Thanks for the kind introduction, and thank you all, especially the Women's Forum, for inviting me here today. First, let me start by wishing all of you a very good evening and a very happy Women's Day. I mean, that's the occasion we are celebrating today. You know, over the past years, you know, in the last 5 or maybe a decade, you know, I came across Father's Day, Mother's Day, Men's Day, Women's Day. Honestly, in the past, I was not aware that such days ever existed here. You know, it was always Independence Republic. And then I said, okay, if you are going to celebrate it, let's understand the objective and the purpose for each of these days. So today, you know, I actually researched. I've been researching on this in the past as well. The purpose for the International Women's Day is to uphold women's achievement, recognize their challenges, and focus greater attention to women's rights and gender equality. As Uma rightly said, each year there's a different theme, and today, this year, they have a very powerful theme, right? Break the bias. It's very, very relevant in today's world, and specifically, it's one of the part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as well, Gender Diversity Goal number 5. And there's a commitment by all corporates, all individuals to, you know, abide by the UN SDGs, as we call them. Now, for us to really appreciate it, we really need to understand the meaning of bias. What does bias mean? You know, I used to hear, and I've tried it as well. To be very honest, I've tried it. You keep repeating a lie, you know, after a point of time, it becomes truth, and it is accepted as a truth. And the way I do it is we had something called Chinese whisper. So I will spread a rumor among a couple of my friends, and I tell them to pass on and on. Okay, they'll keep passing on. After a week, it comes back to me, and I said, yes, I heard it from someone else, and then suddenly it becomes a truth, right? I started it. It was based on you know, false data, whatever, just like that. So that is how, you know, a lie, when you repeat, becomes a truth. Similarly, any truth that is derived, you know, from a foundation of lies or incorrect facts leads to a strong feeling of favor towards or against one group of people, which is not based on fair judgment, and which leads to a bias. And sometimes this bias gets automatically triggered in the brains, you know, and we make a quick judgment and assessment, you know, based on our 6 senses, right? And that becomes an unconscious bias. So it's very important we understand what is bias, what is unconscious bias, before we can address with this particular topic. Other thing is, bias or unconscious bias is not only restricted to gender, it is also the linguistic abilities. Now imagine if I was to address today in my mother tongue or a local language and not English, the impression I would carry, right? Or if I start mixing up my local mother tongue in this, so you know, people will get an impression, or there will be a bias saying that, oh, he's not educated or he doesn't know anything. You know, that's one. Second thing is dressing styles. You know, all of us in India have unique dressing styles, right? Today, I'm in my shirt. It's more Western. It's not my original style, right? Or what, that is not what the culture of India is. But people have that perception, especially when you're traveling overseas. Education, BCom versus chartered accountant versus doctors, right? I keep fighting with my MBA friends that, I'm a chartered accountant, I'm a cost accountant, I'm a professional. Well, MBA is not a professional degree, right? I would argue with them, it's just a diploma. So these arguments would continue, and these actually leads to a bias. Public etiquette, following a particular religion, being a part of a particular community. So sometimes we say, okay, this person is a very stingy guy because he comes from a particular community. He's a great businessman because he comes from a particular community. We keep saying that, right? And that is what a bias is. And of course, regional, right? People from north, I call them very aggressive. Okay, people from west are happy-go-lucky, right? People in south would be very modest, low profile. These are the biases we create ourselves. Nobody else has created. We have created it ourselves over a period of time. Now the question that comes up is, how do you break this bias? And like any other consultant, I come with a very strong 28 years of consulting background. And what I was always told or taught is, before you address an issue, do a root cause analysis. I said, okay, let me do a root cause. How did this bias originate? And when I Googled it, just like Uma Googled up to find out what the theme is, I also did the Google of this. And I realized that this inequality goes back 8,000 years. So this inequality started so many years back. I said, okay, if I start doing research on what happened, it's not going to work. So let's do it a little differently. I said, I believe that the quickest way to break this is to eradicate this bias right from our mindset of every individual. We have created ourselves, let's get rid of it. There's no point looking back why it happened, when it happened, what happened, how it happened. No point now. Okay, it's too late in the day. The best part of India, and I'm sure these are numbers which are published, we have 1.4 billion today as we speak population. The median age is 28 years. What that means is more than 50% of the people are below the age of 28. What that means, that they are all the Gen Z and the Gen A population today. They are the youngsters. They are driving behaviors. They are driving the trends, right? So if we can get rid of the bias from their minds, we should be able to resolve this matter very quickly. Therefore, it becomes very, very imperative that we embed these virtues of equality and non-discrimination in our value system, which is within our education system as well, right? Right from kindergarten, our kids should be taught that there's nothing called, you should not be discriminating, gender equality. That is, I think, what is very important. Apart from this, all of us and all the individuals, we suffer bias. We also need to speak out. If we do not speak out, then we are accepting it, right? When I do the analysis, there are 3 forums where we can actually get justice. One is the usual court trials that you keep seeing, the judicial system of the land. Second is the media trials. You keep going on social media, go to newspapers, and they do a trial for you. And the third one is a public trial where each individual can speak up and then form a community there, right? If you remember the Me Too movement, that was a fantastic moment wherein all these things, the harassment came out. And that's, I think, something which you should look at. Further, there are various forums which various large corporates and organizations have created which can be used to escalate such matters and resolve them. However, one must always remember that a coin has got 2 sides. This again becomes sometimes a double-edged sword, because I've been a part of ethics, integrity committees, and a lot of times I've had a consulting projects that these avenues can be misused as well, right? However, these should be treated as exception and should be dealt as exception, not as a rule. So we should not be sort of avoiding these forums just because somebody is misusing it, right? Today, we have a great bunch of panelists, and I think Uma, Nikhil, and all have introduced, and who will share their experiences around this subject. And before I hand over to them, I would like to conclude here by saying that IA as a forum encourages and supports Break the Bias agenda. And various initiatives we have taken in that direction over the last 3 to 4 years, starting with the Women's Forum, which started from the Delhi chapter, and then all the 6 chapters along with IA India is now supporting it. I welcome all of you to be a part of this forum and individually drive the change you want to see in the country. We as an organization would like to be a part of the journey along with you to break the bias. So with that, I conclude. Hope you have a fantastic evening here, and I now hand it over to Nikhil or Uma.
Thank you so much, Adithya. I mean, really, it's so encouraging, so motivating for us to perform more. And once again, thank you on behalf of the Women's Forum. Next, we move on to the next session of the introduction of the speakers. Sana will be doing this. and introduction of the chairs also, the respective chairs. Before that, I would like to do a small intro on Sana. Of course, it's really a privilege for me because Sana has been a great organizer along with me in this. Yeah. She had, in fact, given me a very beautiful introduction about her. So I would like to just take some of those words which she had specifically asked me to mention. So that's why I wanted to look into the very dynamic professional with more than 15 years of experience as a chartered accountant, a brilliant author and entrepreneur with excellent leadership qualities, and a versatile lady with a track record of successfully leading a team to execute future projects. Currently, of course, Sana is the chief editor of our magazine. She is the secretary of the Delhi chapter and also the chair of the Women's Forum Delhi. And professionally, she works as a partner with Vinod Krishna and Associates. And by qualification, not only she is a chartered accountant, she is also a lawyer and a company secretary. And to me personally, it's an extremely empowering experience to be working in tandem with this exuberant and diligent professional. This is what I would also like to add. Over to Sana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving the wonderful intro about me. So before I introduce all the chapter chairs, I take the privilege to introduce Miss Uma, ma'am. She is basically the force behind today's session, the main force who actually make us come forward all the chapters together and made this event happen. She is presently chairing the IIA India Women's Forum and also the Senior Vice President for IIA India. She will going to be the next president of IIA, the first lady president for IIA India. She is having more than 35 years of experience as a professional. She is contributing at the chapter level and at a national level for more than 10 years. She's associated with a lot of NGOs and working on the social platforms on her personal basis. As far as the professional thing is concerned, she is a dynamic, versatile, forensic and the governance professional who is leading the organization. She runs her own organization. And now I request Adithya, before he leaves, to present the certificate to her.
Yeah. So thank you. So thank you, Uma, thank you for all your support and all the initiatives that you've taken. And I'm sure we'll continue with the same rigor moving forward as well. So a round of applause to you. And we have done really well this year, and this has been shared with all the chapters as well as far as the gender diversity goes, whether it is amongst the members or whether it is among the BOG. So we have taken conscious effort to focus on those. So thank you so much, Uma, for your help, and all the best to you.
Thank you, Aditya, so much. It's a pleasant surprise, in fact, because I was thinking it's for the chapter chairs I was giving. So this is really a pleasant surprise. Thank you very much. This really encourages me to do more on this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. While you encourage us to do more and more, so you should remain motivated for this.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you. So now moving on to the introduction for all the chapter chairs which we have. Across India, we are having 6 chapters. Starting from one of the very large chapter, that is Bombay chapter. We have Nehal Shah. She's chairing IIA Bombay chapter Women's Forum. Nehal is a commerce graduate and a chartered accountant, CIA, CISA, DISA and FAFD qualified. Presently, she is partner, CNK and Associates. She has experience of over 24 years in the field of internal audit and assurance services, covering the entire gamut of BSFI, manufacturing and service sector. She's also focusing on internal financial controls, review and risk assessment. She's presently chairing IIA Bombay Women's Forum and the vice president for the IIA Bombay chapter. She has spoken at the seminars organized by IIA as well as ICI, WIRC, and also contributed to WIRC internal audit publication. Nice to have you, Nehal. Next chapter chair with us is Lalita. Lalita Satish, she is chairing IIA Bangalore Women's Forum. Lalita has completed her Masters in Commerce and did Chartered Accountancy, CIA, CISA, CS and MBA. Presently, she is working in the professional capacity as the Principal Director at Accenture. She has experience of over 22 years. She helped clients and internal organization maintain effective control environment, have implemented number of continuous learning platform for upskilling staff, contributed to various CSR activities, including COVID rehab measures. Welcome, Lalita.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be part of this group today.
Next with us is CB Jayashri. She's chairing IIA Madras Chapter Women's Forum. Jayashri is a commerce graduate and a chartered accountant. She is presently working as director in Deloitte, India. She has 16 plus years of experience and working with multiple professional firms with subject matter proficiency in internal audit and related services in financial services and industrial market as her core industry practice. She has also worked with clients to provide them value addition through inventory formation, investigation process, and management reviews. Welcome, Jayashri.
Pleasure is mine, Sana. Thank you for the introduction.
Next with us is Madhuri Krishnaswamy. She is chairing IIA Hyderabad Women's Forum. Madhuri is a chartered accountant and presently working as financial controls and compliance lead, Novartis, one of the leading pharma company. She has experience of more than 16 years. She spent approximately 12 years in consulting firms like Deloitte and GT and moved on to get an industry flavor to Novartis. She has experience in internal audit and other risk advisory services across various industries and perform internal audits globally in more than 10 countries for different clients. She is also serving as the diversity and inclusion lead for her current division for a team of more than 600 people in Novartis. Welcome, Madhuri.
Thank you so much, Sana. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Next, we have for the next chapter we have is Calcutta. Ratna Rachita Monti. She is chairing IIA Calcutta Women's Forum. She is actually very vibrant and dynamic lady. Presently, Ratna is a fellow chartered accountant and an entrepreneur. She runs her own practice and has experience of more than 10 years. She is the partner and MDC and Associates Chartered Accountant. Recently, she has been elected as secretary for the Cuttack branch of EIRC of ICI. Welcome, Ratna, for today's session.
Thank you, Sana, for the introduction. Thank you, Sana, for the introduction. Thank you so much.
Over to you, Nehal.
Thanks, Sana, for a kind introduction. Now we come to our esteemed panelist. It's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Nandita Parekh, who is also a very dear friend and guide. Yeah, okay, you are on video. Apart from that, she is a second rank holder at the intermediate and gold medalist at the final examination of Chartered Accountancy. Nandita holds the distinction of being the first woman to top the final CA examination. She has also secured second rank in BCom and first rank in MCom and done MBA from USA. She was a partner of CNK and Associates LLP. Prior to joining CNK, she led the audit and consulting practice of Messrs. Ejisha and Company. She is specialized in internal audit and risk advisory services. She has authored a book on internal controls over financial reporting, a handbook for private companies and their auditors. The book was published by Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. Nandita has done pioneering work in pursuing the cause of women chartered accountants in sensitizing the profession about the need for better work-life balance and has supported many women professionals in restarting their professional careers. An academician at heart, she is actively engaged in mentoring article students and young professionals. She has been actively associated with the BCAS. She currently co-chairs the Internal Audit Committee of BCAS. She has been instrumental in designing internal audit studies, a long duration study course on internal audit, which is successfully conducted by BCAS year on year. Welcome, Nandita, and thanks for inviting our invitation. Thanks for accepting.
Thank you so much, Nehal. My pleasure. My pleasure to be on this panel.
Yeah, over to you, Ratna.
Good evening, all.
Hello, everyone. Lalita. Okay, fine.
Good evening, all. It feels very good to be part of the session today once again. You know, changing mindset is at the heart of breaking bias. So with that note, I'm more happy and privileged to introduce Aditi, who is a speaker from Bangalore. Aditi is also an MBA graduate from the XLRI Jamshedpur Institute. She's a very tenured HR professional with Accenture, who has a deep passion for culture, employee experience, and has led multiple initiatives on inclusion and diversity. Initiatives include tackling diversity in recruitment, career development, and her business was the first in Accenture to have zero promotion gap between men and women. So I cannot think of having another woman than Aditi who could talk on the topic today. Aditi has also led work on changing the company's focus from diversity to belonging, something we will hear more about in the session today. Finally, Aditi is deeply passionate about mentoring women, and as a mentor for the Cherry Berry Foundation for Women, she's mentoring young women entrepreneurs from Turkey and South Africa. Aditi, it's our pleasure to have you in the session today, and we are very curious to hear your views on the session.
Thank you so much, Lalita. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the IIIA for inviting me. It's a privilege and an honor to be within this panel of very, very esteemed and experienced professionals and to share with you some of my learnings and my thoughts on the topic of breaking the bias.
Thank you. Over to the next chair for introduction.
So this is Ratna. Hello, everyone. A very happy International Women's Day to all of us first. The panelist from Calcutta chapter is Ms. Reema Mukherjee. Reema heads strategic initiatives and corporate communications at Arohan Financial Services, one of India's largest microfinance providers, empowering millions of women at the bottom of the pyramid with formal microcredit. She also spearheads I&D efforts as head of the Diversity Council and is presiding officer of company's POSH internal committee. She believes that inclusion and diversity must be a strategic initiative for all organizations in today's world, irrespective of industry and size. Having worked across continents and cultures, she is passionate about creating equal opportunities by championing through inclusion and diversity. Welcome, Reema.
Thank you so much for having me here. Happy Women's Day. And I'm so excited to be a part of this panel and to speak and listen and hear from all of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Over to Madhuri.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Madhuri. I'd like to introduce Dr. T. Vasudha, who is currently the head of wellness at Brandix India Apparel City. Her areas of work include heading the counseling and well-being team, CSR, corporate social responsibility, POSH governance, employee wellness initiatives. She's also contributed in the design of Brandix Group Abuse and Harassment-Free Workplace Policy. She's currently serving as the vice chair, and she's also the incoming chair of CII, IWN EP Executive Council. And she's also the chair of the Gender Diagnostic Tool. Her responsibilities include driving the IWN agenda in Andhra Pradesh and contributing to the same. She holds Masters in Applied Maths and also is a doctorate in Inventory Management. She has experience in teaching in various business management schools in Ahmedabad and in Vizag, and has more than 7 years of management and research consultancy experience. She's very passionate about social sustainability and CSR, gender inclusivity and diversity. Dr. Vasudha, thank you so much for accepting the invite, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Madhuri, and everyone for having me. Yeah, looking forward to a lot of takeaways from this session, and of course, I would like to share what my piece on it also. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Jayashree.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, everyone. For everyone who joined here, happy Women's Day for all of you all. I would like take this pleasure to invite our panelist from the Madras chapter, Ms. Deepa Seshadri. She is a partner with Deloitte Risk Advisory Practice with over 24 years of experience providing cybersecurity and technology controls advisory. She has experience in working on cyber strategy and governance risk and compliance related work for manufacturing technology global in-house centers in India. She leads multiple cyber strategy, cyber controls transformation related engagements for a number of large global corporations. She also contributes significantly in the women in technology and leadership initiatives, both internally and externally. She has presented in this topic as part of the ISACA, WIT, DSCI, etc. Deepa has also presented in various industry forums and is a regular facilitator in the ISACA chapter. She has published articles in ISACA journal and leading newspapers. She has also written thought papers on controlled transformation, automation related areas. So she is a CISA and CISM by qualification, along with her masters in management. And we welcome you, Deepa, for this session, and thank you for accepting the invite to join us here.
Thanks, Jayashree. It's my pleasure to be there, and that was a very longish introduction. Thank you very much, and happy International Women's Day to everybody on the call.
Sure. We would also like to, Sana, shall I, do you have the other speaker?
Yes,
or?
Please carry on.
Sure. So I would also like to, introduce the eminent moderator today, Mr. Satish Shenoy. He is, as Uma mentioned at the beginning, he is a guru for all of us. He's been mentoring a lot of people, and he has over 40 years of experience in internal audits, risk management, forensics, and ethics across various organizations, various large organizations, which includes Adithya Birla Group, L&T, Lupin, Oneida, and so on. He is by qualification a chartered accountant, a cost accountant, also an 8th rank holder in CS as well. He is closely associated with many professional accounting and auditing bodies and also educational institutions and trade associations. He is a key member of the expert group for the issuance of the Forensic Accounting and Investigation Standards by the CA Institute, which was issued in August 2021. And he also anchors the series CEO Speaks for the CA Institute and the Chief Auditor series for SAMA. He has a daily blog, The Reading Corner, where he has a lot of positive and motivational quotes and powerful stories which help a lot of people. And there are over 6,000 members in that group. And he also has, as a part of his vision, he has also decided to give back to the society what he calls in a small way, but he does a lot of activities which includes voluntary mentoring, assisting underprivileged children in enhancing their English speaking skills, and carry out a lot of social projects. And he is also in writing 2 books. So we are happy to have you, Mr. Satish, in the session, and thank you very much for accepting our invite to join us in this program.
Thank you.
Over to you, Sana. Thank you, Sana.
Before we start today's session, last on the list on our panel, we have Neha Singhal. Neha Singhal is a chartered accountant and a law graduate. She is currently working as Deputy Director with the Bureau of Indian Standards, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Administration, Government of India. She has earlier served as Senior Manager in one of the state-run banks. She has more than 10 years of diverse experience of working in private, PSUs, and government sector. Neha ardently believes that there is nothing women cannot achieve. Over to Satish sir for the panel discussion to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you, everyone. And welcome to this forum. May I request all the panelists to switch on their videos, please? Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. So what a pleasure it is and a great honor for me to be right here in front of you in the midst of such high achievers. I'm grateful to the IIA Women's Club, particularly Uma Prakash, and each of the chapter leads to have. Can I request everyone to be on mute, please? Yeah. So I'm grateful to the IIA Women's Club, particularly Uma Prakash, and each of the chapter leads for me to be the chosen one to moderate this panel discussion. I'm awestruck by the amount of activities that the Women's Club has undertaken this year. Marked annually on March 8, the International Women's Day is one of the most important days of the year to recognize women's significant contribution and rally together to accelerate gender equality. Can you imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination? As citizens of India, we are incredibly proud of our passionate, resilient, and inspiring women who are actively working to force change by breaking down discrimination barriers through their research impact, teaching excellence, and forward-thinking initiatives. To all leaders, it is time for us to raise the voices of women everywhere, especially against those who hesitate to speak up about bias in the workplace and outside of it, and to those who actively are advocating against it. While it may not be noticeable to many of us, gender biases and stereotypes have been deeply ingrained into our working norms, influencing the way we work, from our hiring processes to our daily environment, workplace, and interaction. We as leaders are breaking the bias for a more inclusive and fair workplace, as well as a society going beyond commemorating the International Women's Day just once in a year. While we have some way to go, we are committed to driving diversity and equity in our workplace, our industry, and our community. Regardless of gender, International Women's Day 2022 today is a beautiful moment for us to reflect on and celebrate the strides made in women empowerment globally. We celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women as part of the International Women's Day. It is also a day of action to help accelerate women's equality. The IWD 2022 campaign theme, Break the Bias, asks us to imagine a gender equal world, as I said earlier, free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination. A world where differences are valued and celebrated. Collectively, we can all break the bias. Together, we can take it further and make more progress in support of women's rights socially, economically, culturally, and politically. We hope that this conversation with Aditi, Nandita, Reema, Vasudha, Deepa, and Neha will inspire you as the audience to join us in challenging the bias and spark change everywhere. Happy International Women's Day. I now request Aditi to take the first session. What we'll do is each of the speakers will speak their hearts out, their minds out for about 5 to 6 minutes, and we'll revolve one or two questions for each of them, and we'll leave rest of the evening for the question and answer. At this stage, I implore all in the audience to please ask questions in the question box to enable us to have a very, very, very fruitful and a useful discussion, something which you can always take back home. I don't think we'll get an opportunity like this ever again to pick on the ideas by these beautiful achievers. Thank you. Yeah, Aditi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Satish, and good evening, everyone, once again. So, as I start talking about this, I heard Mr. Adithya earlier said, when he was looking at it, he was thinking about when did bias start? And I had a similar thought in my own head. Mr. Satish also said, gender bias and stereotypes are deeply ingrained in all of us. And that is very true. So let's just take a step back and understand why this is the case. So if you look at the science of bias, right, why, we are all biased people. All of us as human beings are biased. Why is that? And the thing to understand is as human beings, we're like million-year-old hardware and we're trying to run modern software. We evolved over so many million years, but right now we're living in this modern world, mega city, interconnection, cutting across culture, our geographies. And our brain processes information faster than a cell phone. So a cell phone processes information 0.1 second. Our brain is faster than that. What does that mean? It means there's so much information coming. Our brain does not dissect individual bits of data. It chugs information, it puts it into categories and buckets, and that is how all of us as humans process data and navigate this complex world around us. Our brains, our human condition is one that we see patterns and we extrapolate the future. It's a fundamental thing that makes us human. It's the fundamental thing that made us build huge civilizations. Mr. Aditya spoke about how bias started 8,000 years ago. What happened 8,000 years ago? Agriculture was introduced 8,000 years ago. So you can see the connection, right? When we started living in groups and we started building civilizations, bias started because that is how our brain processes information. So what I want to start by saying is all of us are biased. There is, and we need to first acknowledge we are all biased. That's the step one of it, acknowledging it. Not saying it's a negative or a positive thing, but just acknowledging we are biased. If we can acknowledge that as a first step, then after that, we can start uncovering what are the unconscious biases we have, and then we can address them. Okay. There is a very famous test developed by Harvard that it's called implicit association test. It helps you uncover what are your unconscious biases. And preparing for today's session, I did the test myself. And what I learned about myself is, in my way of thinking, I see career as neither a male nor a female concept, but I see family as a very female concept. In my own head, family is connected to mother and it's female. And so what does that mean? That means that it's neither a right nor a wrong, right? It's my unconscious bias. It's not right or wrong, but it tells me when I do work, when I think about challenges of balancing career and family, when I think about being caregivers, my mind goes to women. My mind is excluding men from that conversation. And that is wrong. So that's the first thing, is to say we're all biased. If we start with saying I am not biased, we've already lost the battle. We're all biased. Let's understand what our biases are. The second step is to also know when does a bias come to the fore. And it usually does when you're in a time of mental stress, when you're tired, when you're exhausted, and your brain is taking shortcuts. That's when your bias is coming to the fore. So if you know that, then during those times, challenge yourself even more to question, to ask questions, to look at data. Don't make an assumption because your brain is already wired to use a shortcut. Push yourself to not use the shortcut. Ask questions of people around you. And the third thing I would say is there are tools that can help you overcome your bias once you're aware of it. Empathy is the most important tool, right? Put yourself in the shoes of someone else and think about how you would feel in that situation. That is a very important tool you can use. It only takes you 1 minute or 2 minutes, and it's not necessarily go and research data, but that is an important thing that will help you overcome bias. There's another thing called substitution tool. And so substitution tool is simply when you're in a situation and in your own head think, if this was a man, would I react the same way? If this was an LGBT person, would I react the same way? Just substitute the people in that situation mentally and challenge yourself if your reaction would be the same, no matter what the identity of the person in front of you is. And that will really help you overcome the bias. So I want to end here, but I wanted to start also with saying, let's first acknowledge we're all biased. It's not good or bad. It's part of what made us as human beings build these huge civilizations around us. But if we can acknowledge that, if we can know what our biases are, at an individual level, there are simple things we can do to overcome them.
Wonderful, Aditi. You have made me learn a new word, which is unconscious bias. I mean, I was always thinking about the conscious bias, but you brought in a new term called the unconscious bias. As per you, what are the practical things that teams and leaders can do to mitigate against unconscious bias?
Absolutely. So we spoke earlier about what you can do as an individual, right? So thank you for that question, because now let's elevate it and say, what can you do as a team leader to mitigate bias? I think the first and most important thing is within your team, agree to certain ground rules that all of you as a team will stand up for and hold each other to account. And you know why that is very important is because if you all jointly agree on ground rules, when someone does something that is inappropriate, you don't have to challenge the individual, you challenge the behavior. That's a much better conversation to have. It's better to say, and if I can use your name, Lalita, just because you know each other in this example, it's much better to say, hi, Lalita. As a team, you and I agreed these would be the principles we follow. Today, you did X, Y, Z, and it was sort of showed a bias that you have against, a person from South India. So you and I agreed these are our principles, and what you did today didn't meet up to that, so I'm asking you to change. That's a better conversation. You never want to have to call up Lalita and say, Lalita, you are biased, because that's not a conversation she would like or I would like. It will only build up defensiveness. So first agree to your ground rules and always tackle, challenge the behavior, challenge the situation, don't challenge the individual. That is the first thing. Secondly, there are priming techniques also that you use as a leader to send subconscious messages. For example, at the start of a compensation process, you say upfront, I don't expect to see differences in promotion by gender. It's just a statement. It's not an argument with anybody. But as you say these statements, subconsciously, the message is going into people's minds about what is encouraged and what is expected. So that is another important thing to do. Always encourage people to contribute equally. Try to have decisions with consensus, because that's how you're overcoming your own bias. If you're making decisions individually, your bias will come to play, because we've spoken about it. Everybody is biased. So the more there is consensus, the less there is a chance for bias to enter, because different people's perception is brought in. And I would say, and of course, ensure you recruit people from different backgrounds, build a diverse team, and, get to know team members as individuals. Try to mentor someone from a different background. As a team leader, it will really help you expand your own way of thinking and build empathy. So those are the few things I think as a team leader, small, practical, easy things you can do. They don't cost money. They don't need a new software, but easy things you can do to mitigate against bias.
So while the other panelists, I'm sure, are raring to go, Aditi, I just have one more point, a very quick point, which I want to get a take from you. Do you think that this bias, as I heard you speak, I have now understood that it is applicable even to a smaller kind of a mid-sized entities? So am I right in thinking that? Because there is a lot of people in the audience who might not be from the very large companies. So is this concept, I am now convinced hearing you, that it is applicable. What is your quick thought on it?
Absolutely. As we said, bias is applicable everywhere. Small organizations with 10 people, they're larger organizations. It exists everywhere. And, if you are from a mid-sized organization and you're thinking right now, what can you do? There are a few tips that, again, I could, offer. Firstly, if you're the owner or, at a leadership position in a mid-sized organization, start the dialogue. Okay, you could take the same test I took. You can transparently share your results and you can talk about, here are my biases. I'm sharing them with you transparently. If you ever see me act in a way that brings these biases to the fore, tell me. I'm open. But start a dialogue. When you're in a smaller company, you have a much closer connection to the people, very simply. So start a dialogue directly talking about it. Also in mid-sized company, employee resource groups, again, they are a way for you to stay connected and you can have conversations about biases in many smaller forums. This is the advantage of having small size. As compared to scale, it was impossible in a company of 100,000 people to listen to everybody. But you have that opportunity and that advantage to bring everyone into a conversation in a small and mid-sized company. So do that. And I would also say when you are in this stage of growth, this is the right time for you to send clear communication on expected behavior, on expected culture, clear criteria for evaluating, people. This is the time for you to establish that culture, sow the seeds of it today, so that as you grow, the culture will remain intact.
So many different perspectives, Aditi, in just 10 minutes. I wonder if we had 3 or 4 hours, how great the learnings would be. Thank you very much, Aditi. We'll come back to you a little later. Nandita is already, I can see that she's geared up and raring to go. So Nandita, over to you. I'm so happy to see, to be part of a panel and to be moderating it when you're there. So Nandita, we are all ears for the vast experience that you have. And I'm cognizant I'm aware of so many things that you have done in this field. So just over to you, Nandita.
So while Aditi gave us a larger or a macro view, I'm really here to share a very micro view so that every one of us, including you, Satish, should be able to relate to this. So what happens is, as rightly Aditi said, that the first sign of wanting to make a difference is to acknowledge that there is a problem. When I don't acknowledge a problem, I cannot resolve it. So here I am going to share from my personal story all that I want to acknowledge myself. So first is, if in my busy work life, when I was a full-time mother and a full-time homemaker and a full-time professional trying to be all three together, if somebody had asked me that, Nandita, what are your biases? I would have just shrugged my shoulders and said, I'm sure I don't have any. But only when you sit back in a quieter, reflective, non-judgmental space, you start going through incidents of your life and you realize that, yes, there have been biases which you held at some point and you've overcome. So just to start that first, when I did my articleship, there was one group of college students who was thriving on the parapets of Sydenham College, acting in plays, singing during the breaks. And here I was trying to study for my CA and then started my articleship. And somewhere I think I always thought that I was leading a more sensible life than others. I was more committed, that there was a greater purpose. And why are these people just spending their time in such a casual way? It's only later that when I saw, and these were some of my colleagues, that a Shamak Davar who was dancing through set up his own academy, and a Pinaz Basani who would sing in every break became a singer to acknowledge. I realized that everybody was chasing their own dream in their own way and they were working as hard or harder. So this was one of the biases which I would like to acknowledge. Many of us have this. Similarly, there is always, and I'm talking of now intra-gender bias. See, working women and non-working women. So I believe that all women work, but women who are part of formal work environment and women who choose not to or don't have the opportunity, it's a strange relationship. I think both look at the other group as not doing the right thing. So I do remember times when a lot of times I was asked that your husband is doing well, why do you work still? And I would always say that I've never even looked at what I'm earning in my firm because I just love to work. So these are the perceptions that we have gone through, where I have been both a recipient or a victim and a somebody who has perpetrated the bias at both ends. So as a working woman and as a woman who's a homemaker, mutual respect for each other is what I would go for. Proficiency of language, Adithya already spoke about it, so I don't want to, but basically the word Dehati or vernacular medium is almost an insult. It is not a description. And that is also something that we need to, are we open to invest in somebody who only has a little bit of a language handicap but is technically very sound, or we find it too much of an effort? Again, in our profession, in the space I come from, there is a Big Four camp and a non-Big Four camp. And it is always us versus them. In that us versus them, the entire profession suffers. I do believe that the Big Four and the others, if they come together, the profession would see different heights. And then as I became older, I started looking at myself as a homemaker and myself as a work leader. And I tried to say I cannot have two separate lives. And I would like to share this specifically with you, because some of you will be able to relate to this. So I have a male driver and I have a woman helper at home. Without betting an eyelid, I give a weekly off to my male driver. But my lady who works, and I call her in a lighter way, and I call her the COO of my house because she manages everything. She makes it possible for me to work and be on such panels. So, you know, it took me a while to get my neighbors and my friends and my family to agree that yes, women who work in household at least require some time off, you know, so to give. So this is one thing. Then same thing when I look at that in the office when I work, and a lot of us work in self-service offices, which are even better. But a male office boy would get me my cup of tea sometimes. He was working 8 to 5. And at home, perhaps his own wife, who was also working 8 to 5, will bring me the cup of tea. Why do I consider office boy to be a male job? Because he gets the exposure to a wider world while she remains in these confines of a house where her work environment is dictated subjectively by the person and the person's mood at that point. So this is where I also feel that, are we ready to look at absorbing a different gender at different roles in our organizations? Moving forward, during my articleship, even firms as large as CC Chokshi, which eventually became part of Deloitte, didn't even take women articles. You know, I had a desire that I should possibly do my articleship. And when they said CC Chokshi, they said that we don't take women, we don't take girls for articleship at all. And so many clients I went to, in fact, a lot of people ask me, why do I drink small sips of tea? It is because so many of my clients didn't have a women's bathroom to go to. So when I look at it, we've come a long way. But yet, when recruitment is done, a guy is never asked that what are your plans, how many children you are planning to have, directly or subtly, or at what stage of marital cycle you are right now. So what happens is, I'm saying that if you want to ask a question, ask it to every gender and make it sure that you convey that if you are the husband, if you are the parent, our organization values you sharing your responsibilities at home. According to me, it's best that the question is never asked. So then we went through a merger, and this is also what I say, that when our worlds widen, we come eye to eye with our biases. And one particular point which I distinctly remember, that I came from a firm where I didn't even know, but a large part of our team members, partners were Gujaratis. They came from a vegetarian, Gujarati, perhaps a no alcohol kind of a family. When I merged into a larger firm, we were it was a far more diverse firm. There were people who would have non-vegetarian food in their dabba. And I think in the merger, the greater challenges were not working out the profit ratios, but having a person who was a staunch Jain share the canteen table with somebody whose dabba was not complete without non-vegetarian food. So these are some of the things that I feel at a bigger level. I came across a case where one of my large listed company audits, we had to decide a different team lead. The most competent person for the job was a lady who would sport a hijab. I have gone through a lot of dilemma within whether my organization, what is right for my organization and whether my client will accept. And I consider it a personal victory that I stood with her, I introduced her for her skills, and I allowed her to lead the team, and she did it so beautifully. So these are the things, but I also want to talk about reverse bias. In particularly, and Satish, you will be able to relate as internal auditors. This is something that we have shared. So what happens is that we come with our own conditioning, the way we would look at our sons and daughters, and some of it translates back. So I found at some point that all the tougher audits, where the client is hostile, where the commute is tough, where the place that they have to go to is perhaps not considered as safe, it is an all-male team. And where the client is soft, the client is gentle or more polished or sophisticated, that is the audits which my women managers get to do. And this actually will reflect as they grow into their professional growth and development. So I would always say that if my assignment in Nigeria is done by all men team, and my assignment in Singapore has a mixed team or even an all women's team, there is something that is amiss, and I need to acknowledge that there is a difference in the way we are looking at. On a lighter note, when I go for a movie with a larger group of friends and it's an emotional tearjerker, I come out with my dupatta half wet without feeling an ounce of shame. But when my male friend wants to do that, he only says there must be a speck in my eye. He cannot even acknowledge his red eye. So we don't even give them the freedom to cry or to create an emotional response. So with this, I would like to say that whenever we treat individual as part of a group, we are profiling the person, we are not being fair to the person. So rather than profiling the person and then dealing with or building a relationship, first build a relation around the skills, around the roles, around the function, and then widen the net. And also individually, if all of us move out of our cocoon and have larger forums to interact, like the one we are interacting on today, larger groups, whether it is a book circle, whether it is a voluntary organization, when we interact with diversity in a voluntary way, we deal with it better in a non-voluntary environment. So with this, Satish, over to you. This is all that I wanted to share. Hopefully, people will be able to examine that where have they encountered or had expressed a bias themselves.
Wonderful, Nandita. From Aditi's unconscious bias to Nandita, your reverse bias. I think I'm learning a lot of concepts today, which will help me to be a better person. That's the biggest takeaway for me. Nandita, while you have granulated, in detail about all the things that you said, I'd like to pick up two aspects with you. The first one being career breaks. I think as far as women goes, I've known a lot of women who have taken career breaks. My wife is one such. Career breaks, unfortunately or fortunately, come up for the women. What is your take on it, and what is it that organizations need to do? And I need from you one more very important thing. One is that what the organization can do. That means I'm leaving it to some other third party to do something.
Correct.
What is it that I individually can do as a woman to make sure that I come back from the career break far stronger than when I left it?
Yes. So this is one question very close to my heart, because we've gone through a stage where there was no formal maternity leave requirement to now. So there are two types of career breaks. One is a finite career break of 6 months where you know you're going to join back the organization. Now, as a smart woman or a smart person, so somebody may require, and this goes across, that when you know that you have to take a career break, a little bit of engaging with your manager, with your team leader, and with your HR to say what are the skills that the organization needs and is in shortage of. What are the certifications, qualifications the organization needs? Because when I'm on a break, it is not that 24/7 I'm busy. I can pick up, and particularly for a CA firm, if somebody would do a CISA or if somebody would do a CFE, these are very valid requirement which people who are working full time find it very difficult to get those qualifications. They do give you brownie point in the empanelment process. The other is that, stay engaged. Just because you are given the privilege of a paid leave, don't disconnect. Be available for training, offer to conduct training, offer to conduct induction whenever, so that you are not out of sight, out of mind for the organization. That recall is very important. What the organization can do is, particularly if it is a longish break, that there are new practice areas or new emerging areas. Like right now, cyber risk is a big area, or work from home dynamics is a big area for the HR professionals. So when there is a new area, the wider experience is more relevant, but nobody has specific experience. So at a time when GST was new, I would tell a lot of women who were from internal audit, who were from stat audit, that if you want to make a comeback stronger, study and get yourself certified for GST, change the vertical that you are in, because you will be perhaps better than most people who have not even studied the subject. So these are some tactical moves that you can do. Of course, you have to look at your likes, dislikes. But this is what, and also an organization which encourages sabbatical once in 3-5 years for people who have. So what happens is career break should be taken as a need for everyone, irrespective of one's own personal specific circumstances. Then it gets normalized over time. So these are some of the things that I would like to share with you. Thank you so much.
Before we get Neha on the panel, I just want to ask you one more question. While I was doing a lot of reading for coming for this program, I found out that the accounting industry, if I can call it one, and the technology industry are the two industries where lots of work has been done on empowering women, and these two industries, according to me or according to the research that I read, have shown real commitment to empowering women. What is your take on it, and is it only restricted to these two industries, or there are some more in this line?
So I feel that, again, going back to my personal experience, that if I was a doctor in a Gujarati family, my working would have been more accepted than being a CA. So, there are media and other things also glamorize certain professions which are fit for women. And there is not that much of an appreciation, because when I dress up and go to office, people don't even know whether you are a partner, you are a secretary, or you're just out there for a kitty club. So again, not taking a judgment call on anything. Having said that, I feel that in the accounting and the tech industry, yes, there has been wherever there is a high demand, that part of the profession which is otherwise marginalized gets an outlet. And what has happened is, both in the accounting profession and in the tech industry, the demand is perhaps increasing at a faster rate. Having said that, even in accounting industry, I would like to see that, the classification of jobs. If you look at, you ask a group of 600 CA final students, how many of you want to be investment bankers? 590 hands will go up. So what happens is, those coveted positions still are a male bastion. That is what I feel. So what you find is, and the same thing happens when you look at Big Four, where the working hours are very demanding, where it is not possible for the person to contribute in some way to other responsibilities. That is where there is a larger proportion of men. Having said that, I do feel now in pharma industry, research, in academia, everywhere I'm seeing opening up things for women, in sustainability, in so many fields. So I think this is a happy period, but we just need to make sure that the foot remains on the accelerator. And
Absolutely.
For that, all of us need to collectively join.
We'll break the bias, but we'll accelerate on this particular aspect.
Yes.
I just, before Neha, actually, thank you, Nandita, for the perspectives. We'll come back to you. Before I just call upon and request Neha to take the mic, I implore all the people in the audience to please put in questions, because we are very keen to have these questions from you. rather than, the question set that I have, or, what questions come to my mind. My humble request is that you please ensure that the questions come flowing in. Neha, I really appreciate you, in the morning itself, only we had told you about this forum, and you so happily, consented, and we had a small talk in the morning as well. But very, very grateful. I will always remember this. You came in at such a short notice. We are all ears for you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you. It's been my privilege to be here today, and really wonderful speeches by Aditi and Nandita. So there are two things like I wanted to share about this break the bias. First of all, one topic was who created this bias. So Aditya and Aditi also touched this, who created this bias. Anyways, if even if this bias was created 8,000 years ago, like it's a long time, 8,000 years, and we have been still carrying out this bias. And not only men, even women are biased towards women. So we take only seconds to judge the other women.
Yeah.
Second and most important, which I personally believe, though we are celebrating the International Women's Day, I don't think that women need any particular day to be celebrated. Women has been a part of everybody's life from the day any male or female is born till the day the person dies. There is a woman somewhere in their lives, impacting their life and making it more meaningful and better. So what I wanted to say is that if we talk about gender, we are born as male and female, right? But women are created. Women are not born; they are made. They are made by the construct that has been here for such a long period of time. So even if you see, the female contains male. So there is absolutely nothing that women cannot do. I personally believe it, and I have experienced so much of things in my life also, where I have gone beyond the limits that have been set for the girls, and have been able to achieve the unachievable. So there are areas when, if you talk about, like when we are going to the school, we teach the kids, that you should respect women. But when the same kid, when he goes back home, he saw his father ill-treating his mother or her mother, or in the neighbor or anywhere, when they see, we teach something else and we preach something else. So unless that whole dimension is changed, unless women herself stands for the other women, or rather for herself, unless we take a stand for ourselves, nobody else will come and take a stand. There is nothing called a bias. See, if we break the bias, if we break the barrier, there is no bias. The bias will automatically be broken. So we have to, it is up to us to stand for ourselves, for the society, to make it a better place, whether it is a man or a woman. So there have been cases, where the males also have to face the biases. And similarly, women also, females also face bias. So it's better, to make a better society, to make a better environment. We need to finish all sorts of biases, whether it is against the females or against the male. The society should be equal. Male and female should be equal. There should be no differentiator between the male and female. If you see, there have been areas which were considered only for males, that female cannot go and explore these areas. But now, as we see, as the things are opening up, females are taking taking up areas which were considered only for the males, and they are doing much better than what males could have done, or they have been doing. Like Nandita also shared some examples. So it is up to us. Women have to stand for women. So what I personally believe is that unless women for women should be there. Okay, there should be there should be female and male categorization which God has created or which nature has created, but nature has not given any differentiator. That females cannot do this and males cannot do this. There's everything that everybody can do. There have been so many things, so many issues which women have been taking up, and they have been handling things so well whether you take any responsibility, whether it is the professional responsibilities or the personal responsibilities, they are more sincere. They have a sense of responsibility, sense of belongingness. So these constructs that of male or a female, or men and women, these are only the constructs that we have created. We make our mother sacred, a holy figure, for all the sacrifices she has made. Rather than projecting her as a sacred lady, it is our duty that we reduce her sacrifices. Instead of portraying her as a godly figure, we should do our bit and make her life easier.
Very true.
And it is for every female in our life.
Very
So
true.
I would like to conclude by saying that women already hold half the sky, but we have to claim half the earth that belongs to us.
Absolutely, absolutely. I truly like the point that you made, that it's not only a female domain, but even the males do face this bias. And women are getting into male bastions, the so-called male bastions. And what I liked hearing from what you said was that they have not only entered the field, but are doing much better than what a male would do. So that's a very encouraging thought. Neha, since you are part of the, almost like a government department, if I can say, I'm not too sure about this statement, but do you think that there is some distinction between bias at private companies, because you worked in private companies as well, and in institutions such as the BIS or maybe the ministry and so on, because you would be meeting so many people from the government, etc. Or is it a private sector problem, or is it a government only problem, or how do you see this, since you had the experience of working in both?
Yeah, thank you, Satish. See, this is not about the government or private.
Correct.
This is about the society only. So society has patriarchal thoughts embedded so deeply that it will remain everywhere. If you see it at your home, your society, your neighbors, your professional life, whether it is a government sector or a private sector, this bias is everywhere. This bias you will find everywhere. There is no such thing that you will not find it in the government sector or in the private sector. You will find it everywhere.
Right.
Rather, in government sector, I have worked in the bank also. It's a PSU bank. I would say that more and more girls are now joining PSU banks. The women workforce in private public sector banks is much more than the male workforce.
True.
And they are doing so well.
Absolutely. Yeah, true. Even if you take our own profession, the chartered accountant profession, I think the number of girl students over the years have increased tremendously. Though we have Nandita here, who is the first rank holder CA. I think now there are, every time a result is declared, it is, there are female chartered accountants and also doing well and coming into industry, doing practice, getting into all the male bastions. So thank you very much, Neha, for your views. We'll come back to you a bit later. I'm not yet seeing any questions, which is not fair to me and not fair to the audiences, not fair to the panelists. So I would request each one of you to please post in questions as they come. I think it will be very important for us to take audience questions. I'm a big fan of taking audience questions, because the program is all about you. It's not about us. If it's become centric on the questions that I have or I have curated, I think it's not a very good thing. So please do flow in your questions. We'll be happy to take them in a bit. So Reema, you come in next after hearing Aditi, Nandita, and Neha speaking. We're keen to hear your views on the subject.
Thank you, Satish, and thank you everybody who spoke before, Nandita, Aditi, Neha. It's been illuminating for me as well. I want to start by saying that I come from a slightly different background. I'm not a CA. I've done my engineering and my MBA, and irrespective, I think bias is everywhere, right? And I'd also like to take a minute to say that all of us here on the panel and in the audience, we all are in a position of privilege. And when I say privilege, it is just about being here and getting our voices heard, privilege to earn our own living. So many women and men in our country, in the world, who don't even have that. But despite that, right, biases, breaking the bias, it's not only about gender bias, right? Like Adithya said, so many different types of conscious and unconscious biases that we see and experience and maybe even exhibit every single day. And the second thing I'd like to say, not only at the workplace, but also at home. So very cliched terms like women are supposed to be caregivers, women are supposed to be caring, gentle, and not supposed to speak loudly, and the list goes on, right? And this is not something that I'm not speaking, we're not sitting in 1922, we're in 2022, but these things we hear very often. And I wanted to cite an example, which I hope will make sense to all of us. So there was a paper put forward by the National Academy of Sciences, based out of the US, which researched hurricanes and hurricane names and the effect that they had on the US population over a period of 60 years. And there were some hurricanes that are named after women, like Nora, Andrea, Rose, and some hurricanes named after men, like Bill, Barry, Walter. And surprisingly, the results showed that the amount of death and destruction that happened in the hurricanes with female names were much more, almost twice that of the hurricanes named after male names, right? It sounds counterintuitive, but when they dug deeper, it brought forward an unconscious implicit bias that if it's a hurricane with a woman's name, it's supposed to be less destructive, and hence people are less prepared. The government authorities, people themselves, homes, people like us, they're less prepared, and hence the death and the destruction is so much more, almost twice that of male named hurricanes, right? Very insightful, I thought, because nobody kind of, at least I didn't when I first read about this, I didn't link it, but when you kind of tie it together, it's unconscious bias, which is so momentous and so life-changing even, right? But coming to smaller incidents, incidents every day at work and at home. So I work in a microfinance institution, and we tend to almost 2 million women, mostly rural. We give them microcredit loans to help them earn more and supplement their family incomes. Sometimes they're the only income generators in their families. And yet, when we came to our own employment, our own workforce, we saw that though 98% of our customers are women, only about 3% of our staff were women, right? Oh. And there was this not even implicit, explicit bias that women can't work in the field, right? And we're on this journey. So that I try to believe that diversity and inclusion, it's always a journey. It's never a destination. And we've managed to bring that 3% almost to 14% now. And even then, it's like, again, we have to keep at it. So it's not something that we, read somewhere, ki, ha, ab mera ho gaya. It doesn't really work like that. But having said that, I also want to address how do we consciously reduce bias at the workplace, right? I think Aditi covered quite a few points on that topic. And I just want to possibly, as leaders and as people who are able to affect change, right? One thing is to create a psychologically safe workplace. We have to have a shared vocabulary that it's okay to, it's okay to raise your voice against if you're not comfortable, right? A lot of times, either people don't notice or they notice it, but then, maybe somebody senior is saying it, or maybe I just don't know that person too well, and so they just keep quiet. So it's very, very important for all of us, men or women, maybe not call that person out publicly, because then they get defensive and offensive maybe in the process, but then there are ways to speak up, and that is very, very necessary. Secondly, if I'm the person against whom and my bias is being pointed out, I should be taught and trained also. I should have that awareness to say thank you for pointing that out, right? Because it's ultimately helping me, and it's helping me and my team and the organization. So not easy, of course, and even for me, not easy, right? Arey, how could he say like that? How could she say like that? I don't have any unconscious biases, right? But being gracious to accept it and acknowledge it will go a long way. And that's irrespective whether you're a senior, junior, which level you are, which gender you are, it doesn't matter, right? And thirdly, I would say that we have to commit. Unconscious bias, conscious bias, it's there everywhere, right? And addressing bias, addressing true diversity and inclusion, it's a journey, right? It doesn't, it's like you have to keep at it. It's something like maybe weight loss. You just have to keep, not being healthy, not just weight loss. You have to keep at it. It's not like one day, I'm healthy now, I will stop doing yoga and things like that, right? So DNI is like that. And lastly, I'd like to end by quoting a switch in mindset. We do DNI, we do inclusion, but rather maybe we should think of it of being inclusive. There's a switch, so hopefully that makes sense to all of us. Thank you so much, Satish.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love the way you concluded by saying that about inclusiveness. Reema, since you are having a team which is very much into the rural areas, while we managers and leaders, maybe metropolitan cities, or I don't want to bring a bias in there, but assuming that the managers and leaders want to ensure that you break the bias, how is it that I can get my teams to contribute to a bias-free atmosphere? Means what does it mean for the team members to do any such thing?
I think, Satish, it boils down to the fact that no matter where, urban, rural, no matter if it's a big team, small team, we have to create a psychologically safe workplace where people are allowed and empowered to get their full 100% selves to work, right? So if they do that, if I do that, and I'm biased too, but then the person sitting on the other side is also empowered, right, to tell me that, Reema, you're biased, and maybe there's something that came out, maybe you didn't think through it consciously, but it came out. So it's about empowering people, not only leaders, but team members more. Right. So if we are able to create a psychologically safe workplace, no matter where, urban, rural, semi-rural, semi-urban, it doesn't matter, then automatically, and it's not easy, it has to be called out, it has to be communicated. But if we do it enough times, then it will make a change, I'm very sure. And I know it does.
So Reema, parting thoughts. What is the most difficult part of breaking the bias?
I think the most difficult part is acceptance. So when I was preparing for this session today, and I asked a lot of my colleagues and friends, what do you think about bias? And I think about 80% of them said, I'm not biased, right? So, and maybe that would have been my answer too if I was asked the same question. So I think the most difficult part is acknowledging that yes, we do have bias, all of us, each and every one, young, old, male, female, urban, rural, doesn't matter. Right. So once that acceptance comes, then automatically I'm okay, thank you. Now I'm going to address it. So then the response will automatically follow. But getting somebody to acknowledge it is the most important and the most difficult part of it, Satish, I think.
So fine. I'm remembering my cricketing days when I was captaining my school team, and I had to choose. There were very good batters. Those days we used to call them batsmen, and then breaking the bias in cricket today, they are called batters. So that's the one more example of breaking the bias. So we had 6 excellent batters, and choosing the batting order always became a problem. And Uma, so yesterday when we were choosing which order to speak in, Uma very nicely put it on to me to choose the order. But please remember, I have not chosen the order in any particular order. It's just 6 names in a box, and they were picked up. So the next one. So thank you, Reema, for this wonderful perspectives. It was a very good views that you gave in such a short time. Deepa, let's come to you now, and Vasudha will. I can't even say when the thoughts are so good, we'll leave the best for the last, but we'll come to you in a bit. So Deepa, if you can share your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Shenoy, and wonderful hearing everyone. A couple of things from my side, 2 things that I want to talk about. Aditi did touch about unconscious bias, but I want to talk about unconscious bias more than gender, right? So if you look at unconscious bias, if you look at, from a cyber security standpoint, who will be the people whom a company will recruit from a cyber security? You know, if I had to put that question, most of the people here would say maybe from an engineering college or from a person with a cyber security, done an MBA with cyber security. But the point is, we got to encourage recruitments which are not really stereotyped behaviors in terms of a particular qualification. If you are recruiting people as a fresher, it's always possible to mentor them and train them in the field that you would like to look at, right? So from that standpoint, from recruitment standpoint, you know, we kind of have a stereotype behavior there. Second, the second important thing when we are talking about unconscious bias or bias as such, I think we take a liberty to decide on behalf of everyone, right? But everyone is deciding for everybody else except for the person who's actually have to make the decision. Okay, so the thing is, okay, this person will not travel, this person will not do this, this is not safe for that person to do. I'm like, I tell my team, take a break. Okay, let the person decide what he or she wants to do, right? The opportunity is there for everyone, and let them don't decide on behalf of another person, right? And also, one of the other important things, all organizations today have a lot of policies with respect to diversity and inclusion and diversity and equality, right? But many places it cannot be implemented unless we as professionals in an organization accept the fact that those policies need to see life, right? I mean, we are all, you know, I'll just talk some internal controls language here to say that, you know, you have a design, you have implemented it with one sample, but for you to make sure that the control is working effectively, you got to be operating it through the year, right? And for you to operate it through the year, that particular policy that you have implemented needs to come into you. It has to be by design and by choice. You should be implementing policies with respect to D&E. Otherwise, you will pass the design effectiveness, but then you will fail from an operating effectiveness standpoint, right? So that's the third important one. The other part which I also want to talk about, which, you know, one is apart from gender, there are so many other so many other biases that we have, and the main thing to break the bias is to make sure that you don't decide on behalf of somebody. We have an open mind, right? So that's very, very important. The other part of it, when I talk about unconscious bias, I want to talk about unconscious bias that women have about themselves. Okay, right? So what do I mean by that? They first thing, you know, when asking for a seat at the table, how many of them will raise their hands? They always think, you know, they lack sometimes. A lot of us kind of have the self-doubt, right? That's a topic that's there. We always have a self-doubt to say that, okay, if I make a mistake, what will happen, right? Or if I'm going to say something and that goes wrong, what will happen, right? So my point is, well, it's good to think about what can go wrong, but at the same time, it's okay if it goes wrong, right? We're not handling lives here, right? If I say something, it is not that I'll be, I'll be punished for saying something in a forum. So it's okay. You can make a mistake, but then if you're able to acknowledge that you've made a mistake and you can take it from there, that'll be good. So from women, for themselves, is to have more confidence about themselves. Ask. If you don't ask, you don't get, right? So you have to ask for help. Ask for everything, right? Ask for help. If you think you need to have an elevated position, ask for it. If you think you have a doubt whether your pay is very different from somebody else's pay, go ask for it, right? You only if you don't ask, it's all in your mind, right? So that's the other important thing. If you don't ask, you don't get. And this is something my brother taught me. The last one that I wanted to share, Mr. Shenoy, with everybody is be very, very focused, right? For women, be very focused. You have to decide what is it that you want to achieve. I think 2 weeks down of joining Deloitte, I wanted to become a partner there. And I worked really, really hard to make sure that I get to that, I get there. But only thing is, every day, right? Every day, there will be things that will happen which can pull you down, right? There could be something that happens in your personal life that can pull you down. That there could be something that in your office that can pull you down. But you got to be focused. You got to be confident. You have a goal. You just go after that. And this is what my dad used to say, right? I know I used to love driving, and he was the one who taught me. So when we are driving, he used to tell me, Deepa, if you decide to overtake, and you want to go fast, just do it. Okay, if you're going to be in a position that when you're overtaking, you decide, okay, should I overtake? Should I not overtake? If you do that, you're going to land yourself into trouble. You're going to have an accident for yourself, the person who's coming opposite to you, the person who's coming behind you, and the person whom you're trying to overtake. So you're going to make a mess of it, right? So if you decide to overtake, you want to reach your goal, just go for it. That's my thoughts, Mr. Shenoy.
Yeah, wonderful, Deepa. In fact, I'm tomorrow morning, early morning, 5 o'clock, I'm off on a road trip. So I think this piece of advice, hearing it again at the very crucial time, is going to be very useful for me. So that's thank you, Deepa, and thank your dad for it. Deepa, given your experience of being in Deloitte, where you would have interacted with very big companies, with very senior leaders, you'll agree that today diversity, D&I has become a very important aspect. Why do you think that this has become important? I mean, what has changed over the years to kind of make it very important today?
Okay, so I think being an inclusive environment brings in a lot of new perspectives, right? If you have a team, let's take, for example, I'll just give you, I'm just going to take a cybersecurity example, right? So let's take, I'm implementing a data privacy policy for an organization. Imagine if I have a woman in that team or a mother in a team. The way they would design a data privacy is immediately they'll have, okay, if my daughter is using this particular application, let's take, we are doing a data, an app, I'll immediately think, okay, if my daughter is using this app, what could be the privacy related or data protection that I will need to do, right? In that particular app that is being developed. There is a different kind of perspective that will come in. I'm doing a physical security for an organization, and if I have a differently able person there, they will be able to tell what are their thoughts in terms of how things have to be made easy, right? I'll also give you an example in terms of product accessibility, right? So you have a lot of apps today, right? If that particular app has to be used by someone who cannot see, right? The functionality has to be very different, and there are regulations that are there in terms of how the product needs to be designed, right? These perspectives can come when you have different people. And one other important one that will come in, Mr. Satish, is in terms of having different age group of people working on a particular project. That is also diversity, according to me, right? We talk about millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, everything, right? We always have a perception about them, right? They will not stick in an organization, they don't want to work hard, all of that, right? But when you have them in the team, the kind of innovation that they can bring onto the table, I can admit myself, I wouldn't have thought out of the box, right? So for these reasons, Mr. Shenoy, I think it is very important, and organizations have understood that this kind of diversity is really, really required for you to come with newer thinking, bring in more freshness, and that's why it's gaining more popularity, is what I would think, and I don't think it's a tick in the box at all.
Wonderful. Very nice perspectives, Deepa. Very, very glad that you shared this so freely, so nicely. So Vasudha, you are the last panelist to speak. I'm sure you're waiting to get in, and
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Satish, and thank you, the whole panel. I was listening to everyone, and I think it's the toughest job being the last one and the panelist and one topic. But let us see. I hope I will bring some fresh aspects, hopefully. I would like to start with all of us acknowledge that biases are unavoidable. It is there, and also even science says that is the way humans survived actually. And without that kind of wiring, like machine learning kind of mode, I don't think humans would have survived. The flight, when to flight, when to take flight, when to fight, when to get away from it. When someone is throwing something at you, how do you get away from it? You're not doing a lot of processing there, right? It is how humans survive. That wiring is there. That wiring is what is giving us rise to biases. From childhood, you're reading, listening, whether it is parents, neighborhood, teachers, books you read, right? So more exposure you have, less you have biases which can be troublesome, maybe. But it is normal to have biases. Then what do we do? And like all of us also acknowledge that biases, people are not ready to accept that they have biases, which is again natural. In fact, in my work experience as CII Indian Human Network, this is my work dealing with managements, talking to managements, having dialogues. People are not open to that, right? So people feel, we are criticizing them. So I will do now is I will take 2 minutes first to make it a neutral topic where all the audience here today are open to the idea of bias and why we have to break the bias, right? So instead of getting defensive. So I will move the needle from gender and all issues as a neutral topic called unconscious bias. Like for example, yes, biases are pervasive, and as an individual, we all are wired in certain way that makes biases common, right? Unconscious biases is what we are talking about. If it is conscious bias, I think it should be some other dialogue we should have. If you know that you have a bias, I think this is not the forum we are talking about. So we'll keep it away. So unconscious biases is what we are talking about. So without that kind of wiring, as I already mentioned, we wouldn't have survived as human beings. If you see processing capacity of human brain, I think people who know science, and you might have picked that up already, it's only 40 bits per second. Processing capacity of brain is 40 bits per second average, whereas it is actually getting hit by 11 million bits per second. Information it is getting hit is 11 million bits per second, whereas it can actually process 40 bits per second. So now you tell me, if brain stops and say, let me compile all these 11 bits of information and then only then I will act, we wouldn't have survived. So it's as simple as that. So that is why that machine learning, what we call, is happening. It's learning some reflexes, easy. Like, when I see a man, what to expect. When I see a woman, what to expect. When I see a mother, what to expect. So it's easy. It makes us life easy for brain to function. Now, which is not good, we are all agreeing, right? We are agreeing which is not good because it can impact our decisions and it impact our choices we make, how we look at things, how we treat people and all. If I go for a very crude example, but I think it will hit home, I hope, a simplest one. Suppose I'm sitting in an interview panel as a senior person. I have an influential position and I'm sitting in an interview panel. Because of my biases, my preference will be naturally to pick up someone who thinks like me, who behaves like me, who comes from my community, maybe, who, all this, my university, so this is natural. Who dresses like me, maybe, who reflects my thoughts, maybe. Now, in fact, a recent question Satish was asking, why organizations are looking at this? If I have everyone who looks like me, and if I have a power to choose that, if I'm powered, then where is innovation? Right? Gone, no? The purpose is gone. Sustainability is gone. So that is where I think the policies and all have to come in, which I will touch upon a little bit in a minute. But to make this idea of biases and breaking biases acceptable, I would like to touch upon some neutral examples. I was trying to pick up some examples which our friends didn't touch because this I won't come from gender perspective, for example. For example, when we think of a few years ago, when I was reading about biases, it's 3-4 years ago, I read about one tidbit information saying that the book cover designing is a big area, right? So when you Google books on Africa, right? Books on Africa, images you select, or the whole page will look like oranges, reds, and blacks. So then when they did a bit of survey, why it is happening? The unconscious bias, like Lion King influence they have. That wonderful scene, you remember, right? That Simba lifted that scene. So that color stuck to people. Designers are not getting away. So when that dialogue happened, when that survey was done, now if I see, in fact, that time 4 years ago, I did that and I saw that hardly 5 to 10% were not that colors. Today, if I Google, hardly 5 to 10% are that colors. Oranges, reds are very few now. 4 years ago, it was much higher. So that is what I think I would like to drive it, talking about it, experiencing it, reading about it, and trainings. More than individuals can read, individuals can discuss in forums, but as a teams, as an organization, if you put them through those trainings by experts, understand how it works, then automatically first step is taken. We all are, that culture comes up, like what we call bias busting culture. So bias busting culture, when it comes, smooth everything. So no one is no one's enemy, no one is offended by what we are calling out. And another simple example, so this is one example, Africa I talked about. Another simple example I was thinking is, when Google launched that YouTube uploads very long back, few years ago, they noticed that around 5 to 10% of videos are upside down, which baffled them. They were surprised, it cannot be that 5 to 10% people who are actually uploading can be so bad at what they're doing. That was confusing to them. And when they went back and saw, they didn't design that upload system for left-hand users.
Wow.
You understand that? Right? So again, so it's nothing about gender. Bias is everywhere. And when you don't take into biases, when you don't become inclusive, and when you don't bring in diversity, we are the losers as organizations, as teams, we are the losers, right?
Vasudha,
So,
you made a very, very beautiful point. The world is not designed for lefties. I myself is a lefty. I know that the shirt buttons, I need to do it with my right hand. I can't do it with the left hand. The keyboard in those computers that we had was designed for a righty because the numbers are on the right side of the table, and I do, the punching with the left hand. But of course, as you said, we all learn how to, break the bias in that sense.
Yes, absolutely. So I think they should think of it. They should include that actually. Now, thing is, when I read this, now I'm more observant about. I read more about left-hand users, how it works, and the buttons thing. As soon as you said, I know what you are going to talk about. So that's so unfair. So unfair. So they are the losers. You will you will fall in love with that brand which respects your preferences, maybe, right? So they are whether it is your customer or a team member, they are the losers, right? So that is what is business case is about. That is where they have to bring in diversity and inclusivity. And first step in diversity inclusivity, which is stopping it, and first step we have to take is about unconscious bias trainings, or give them vocabulary. Give them vocabulary. In fact, other day I was mentioning, and today morning also in some audience I was mentioning, few years ago, when we talk about sexual harassment, people were used to go red, men particularly, as if, we are talking about sex, not sexual harassment. Now, people talk about it so comfortably, the vocabulary, impact, intention, hostile workplace, this terminology comes. So trainings are very powerful tools. So start trainings and make your teams understand what unconscious bias is, how it works, how it impacts, how it damages people, and also same time discrimination, how understand what is discrimination, because we all would like to say, I don't discriminate. I don't have any bias. I don't discriminate. You don't even know what a discrimination is, how it can happen unconsciously by you, right? So these are the areas when we start that as a first step. I think that will be set the tone to the organization. And second aspect I wanted to cover, and now falls into the next step logically, is how do organizations have to look at to initiate their D&I policies, D&I strategy broadly. So first step is obviously trainings and commitment of the management, commitment of the top team who are saying, we want this to be done. We are aiming for this. and not only talking to themselves or not only talking among them as a board or anything, but making it a public statement. If you commit that, I think we all know the power of commitment, right? When you put it out that this is what we are aiming for, then that is again a good step. And then trainings happen and identify the champions. There will be some silent champions already. You don't have to find new ones also. Maybe just look out, identify champions, preferably not only from HR, across the board, across the functions, who will drive it for you. If you are the leader, who will drive it for you? Take that bastion and what to be done, when to call up for a meeting, when we should think of revising this policy, is this policy working well or not? All these things, they should be able to drive it. So it's like delegating, you're delegating to them. Identify the champions, right? And then work on the policies. In fact, I think all of you might be aware already. Otherwise, you can maybe want to make a note. Women Empowerment Principles by UNGC. They are well established methods which some of the progressive organizations implemented and which worked, which is they put in together as a tool, right? That tool you can use. Each tool is nothing but it is a self-assessment tool. It is so no one will publish your result. It is you. Maybe you need experts to make you understand how the tool works. That's all. But once you please, I think I request all of you, all the audience particularly, have a look at it, how it looks. We in Indian context we call it gender diagnostic tool, but otherwise it is Women Empowerment Principles of UNGC, United Nations Global Compact. So our friends were mentioning about few things. I was making a note. For example, promotions, recruitments. In recruitment, what we would like to believe as an organization, all of us like to believe that our organization has a gender neutral recruitment policy. We have great intentions. We want women to we want to recruit more women. We want women to climb up the ladder. We want to see women. So intention is there. No one is questioning that, but it is not happening, right? So why is it not happening? Why is it not happening? Something which we don't understand. Something which we don't understand is happening, maybe. Right? No question on. Hello?
Just tell the
Any issue?
That Nandita Parekh's face is that certificate is showing up. Just ask Chanchal to read.
Yeah. Shall I proceed?
Yeah.
Shall I proceed?
Yeah, please.
So when we talk about this recruitment promotions, intention is there, but then leaders will say we are open, we are looking for women, but they are not coming even for interviews. I'm not getting them in CVs. Now that is where you have to create that industry academia interface, maybe, or connect with the networks, create that grassroots level, may ensure that some CVs at least come to your board. It has to be extra effort. We know that it is needed for organizations, so put that extra effort as an organization. I'm sure organizations, if they want, they can do. At least bring the CVs to the interview level. Whether they're selected or not is a different story. That can be on merit basis. Are you ensuring that are you putting that effort? So recruitment policy, is it talking about it? Is your recruitment policy talking about the interview board, for example? Is there a diversity in your interview board? Is it mandatory? Is it prohibited as per your policy that you cannot ask questions, private questions like, whether you are married, whether you have children, whether you are going to have a child or not? Because some of us like to believe that I don't ask such questions in the interview. Some people may say, don't leave it to individuals. If it is on policy, everyone will not ask those questions.
Very true.
Isn't it? So teach them why it should not be taught, why it should not be asked. You tell them, have the discussion, but put it on policy. Agree and put it on policy. Similarly, promotions. What to do? Women, after maternity leave, they come, they are lagging behind. Okay, what are you doing extra for them? Now, putting onus on women to struggle and climb up the ladder is happening. From long it is happening. It is happening, but it's not making big difference. Numbers wise, it is not difference. It's not enough for the speed. The speed is not enough now. That is why we are talking about all these things today, right? Now, how do you accelerate that? You do what else? What as an organization? What environment are you creating? Are you keeping them connected when they are in sabbatical for maternity? Or are you respecting their primary caregiving responsibilities and accommodating them, valuing them? That's what your policy should talk about, right? Maternity Benefits Act is mandatory. Everyone has to do, everyone is doing. But what about, exactly, beyond that, what else you can do?
Yeah.
Yes, I think.
It is running short of time. because the organizers have already given me a subtle message by putting up some certificate which I could see. So I'm sorry, but I had to kind of
yes. Sure, Satish.
intervene.
So I think I conveyed my point. I think that is what I wanted to convey broadly. Yeah, so that's it's fine.
So,
I think. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll just take one question, last question to each one of you, each one of the panelists here. What is one key change that you would like to see in work cultures to eliminate gender bias? I think each one of you could, just freewheel, and that's the time that we'll have for one question. And Nandita, maybe you can go.
I can. That's what I would. Don't decide on behalf of others. So that's what I would say.
Perfect. Nandita, maybe.
I think if paternity leave is given at least half of maternity leave, it will change cultures.
Oh, very good. Reema.
Because it's a message that you're giving. So
wonderful. Reema, maybe you would like to have a go.
I think just telling people that it's okay to listen. We are so eager to say and speak up, and everybody, just to prove that we are there, not just women, men also. Listen, it's okay to listen.
Yeah, I think for last 90 minutes, I was at least all ears. Aditi, from your side?
I think that, what we've spoken about, like, don't have women in the only programs. That's what increases resentment and increases bias. So the biggest change I would like to see is no women in only programs. Programs can be for caregivers, programs for parents. Keep it more inclusive, than exclusive.
Yeah. And Neha, last word said on the subject. Neha, any thoughts?
Yeah, one thing that I would like to say is we have been a progressive society, but there are still some areas where we have been lagging. So the biggest change that I would like to see is that we encourage more and more women into the top leadership, top management. That they can take decisions and they can take charge. This is one thing that is missing. So that will be a welcome step if it happens.
Very good. So I think we have come to the end of this wonderful conversation. I enjoyed it, bringing it to you. I'll end in my very typical way of narrating a very short story, Uma. I won't take too much of time. Don't put the presentation of the certificates up as yet. So I'll tell you this story. It goes as follows. One night, the president of a country and his wife decided to do something out of the routine and go to a very casual dinner restaurant. Go to a restaurant for dinner, which wasn't too luxurious. When they were seated, the owner of the restaurant came up to the president's security forces and asked if he could speak to the first lady in private. They obliged, and the first lady had a conversation with the owner. Following the conversation, the president of the country asked his wife, why was he so interested in talking to you, and that too alone? His wife mentioned that in her teenage years, he had been madly in love with her. So the president, pompous as he was, said, oh, so if you had married him, you would now be only the owner of this lovely restaurant. She responded, no, Mr. President, if I had married him, he would be the president of this country. Believe it or not, sometimes it is a woman who makes a man who he is. And coming from me, I think I need to spell it out very loud and clear. It was a wonderful evening, 90 minutes or more of real fun, real excitement, new thoughts, unconscious bias, reverse bias, all the all the facets of what can make or break a bias. Break the bias was a wonderful topic, Uma, that you selected today, and it coincidentally, as you mentioned in your speech, that it coincidentally was the theme for the IWB 2022. So on this very beautiful note, it's exactly 8 o'clock, and I thank you for this opportunity. I thank each one of the panelists who have really researched, done whatever they could do, and to make sure that we, all of us, have a wonderful evening. I'm very, very grateful to IIA Women's Wing to organize this kind of a program. And I'm the only male out here, but I'm really, really delighted and excited and very, very honored and privileged. And these are not simple mere words. Very, very privileged to be part of this IWD 2022 Break the Bias. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Satish ji. In fact, that's why we decided to request you for the moderator, because we knew that you could do the right job for us, and you really made this wonderful thing. And the last question and your story was really the icing on the cake, I would say, in the entire forum finally. Thank you so much once again on behalf of the Women's Forum and the Institute of Internal Auditors. Now we would quickly move to the felicitation part. Sana, I think I'll read out the names and you can put the certificate of participation. First, would like to thank Ms. Nandita for having accepted, and it has been a very privilege to know you and interact with you in this session today. Dr. Vasudha. Sana, are you putting it? Yeah. Dr. Neha Singhal, Ms. Aditi, Ms. Reema Mukherjee, Deepa Seshadri, of course, Sana Bakhar from Delhi, Nehal from Mumbai, Lalita Satish from Bangalore, Madhuri Krishnaswamy from Hyderabad, Ratna from Kolkata, CB Jayashree from Chennai, and last but not the least, who made this program more memorable for us, Mr. Satish Shenoy, the moderator. Once again, thank you all very much for this wonderful session. And it's a privilege to be part of this vibrant team, the speakers and the moderator. And I would just like to make a quick announcement on, we are planning for a physical meet, inshallah, by God's grace, in the month of May end or June first week, as part of the All India Women's Forum, which is a physical meet in Chennai. I would like all of you to participate and contribute the best for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to the vote of thanks, over to Nehal. Yeah, I think Aditi, you raised your hand for something. Want to tell something, Aditi?
Oh, no, she didn't raise her hand.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Okay, I think I got it wrong. Over to Nehal.
She raised the level of the conversation. She didn't raise her hand.
That's nice. That's nice.
Thanks, Sumaji. It was indeed a wonderful session. Thank you all the panelists. I loved the concept of break the bias, which is not limited to the gender bias. So Women's Day is not only about that. So that's a very different perspective. I learned a lot today from all of you. Few to name it, the concept of acknowledging, substitution tool, unconscious and reverse bias. If you don't ask, there is no possibility to get, or chances are greater if you ask for it. If you decide a goal, go for it. With a lovely example of driving, which kind of gets registered immediately. Even it was interesting to know that Lion King influence or upside video and biases related to technology, which people may not have noticed until maybe some people would have complained about it. So very interesting session. When we designed, we thought we would have ample of time and how we would cover with the conversation, but having now in hindsight, it looks that we could have had little more time and hear you all little more, and added some more interesting perspectives and maybe some more stories to hear. But everything good has to end, and I'll just like to make quick announcement. There will be upcoming Delhi conference on 11th March and Chennai conference on 13th and 14th May. So request the respective cities members to enroll. And of course, if others are interested, open for everybody. And with this, we'll end the session today. Thank you all and good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Reema, Aditi,
Thank
Nandita, Sana, Pratap, Nehal, Neha, Vasudha, Jaishri, Lalita, and Uma. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you,
much.
sir. Thank you all. Good
Thank you,
night.
everyone. Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye. Bye.
Good
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
night.